If you want it all that much, then let's do this,
Kars cried, and flitted down to Dio's level. Dio's The World Ultimate came out, but it was Kars' Whitesnake Ultimate that fought it. Splat! Whitesnake Ultimate punched Dio's cheek, and Dio staggered back. A disc flew out of his head and fell to the ground, where it shattered, and the World Ultimate standing beside him fell apart, dissolving.
Now I will grant your wish. Make these all your own,
Kars said, and discs began flowing out of his head, and as fast as he could, he slammed them into Dio's head.
One more!
Blop! Dio's head swelled up, then returned to normal size.
And another! And another!
Blop, blop! This time Dio's chest and belly swelled up and shrank.
More!
Blop, 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 blop! Dio's entire body swelled and shrank, waves running across it as it bent in all kind of hideous directions. The speed of Kars' arms grew faster and faster, like a punch volley, until discs were swelling into Dio too fast for it to shrink, and he began swelling into a hideous ball of flesh.
How's that feel? You full yet?
Dio's face looked down at Kars' over his swollen body, his expression hollow, but there was still a light in his eyes. Uh-oh, I thought, but Dio opened his mouth, and I heard what he said. This is right. There's no mistake. Everything is taking me where I need to go. That sounded like what the wounded man with the crown of thorns had said. Dio pulled something sharp from near his hand. I yelled, Kars! Watch out! Even without my warning, Kars saw the weapon. Before Dio could take a swing, Kars slammed one last attack home and said,
Everyone has their limits. Can yours contain the entire world? Let your own arrogance lead to suffering. Learn just how limited you really are. Now the finish!
He put one last disc in Dio's head, and his swollen body reached its limit. I braced for the explosion, and Kars waited, a grin on his face. But Dio just said, Thank you. Kars finally looked concerned. With Poochie gone, you're the only one who could take me to heaven, Kars. Dio swung the weapon in his hand. Kars dodged, but to no avail, because Dio was aiming for Whitesnake Ultimate. My angel! Dio said, and exploded. Bam! Chunks of Dio were flung all around. His head, his eyes, his ears, his spine, his torso, his head, his right hand, his left hand, and his legs. 9 parts of him fell to the ground. But of course he was still alive. But unlike the earlier firework vaporizations, this time the bits of his body stayed where they were, making no move to reassemble. Dio's head spoke. So you were the angel, Kars. The only other man who can control Whitesnake. I looked over at Whitesnake, and it wasn't looking right. It had a stab wound. Dio had thrust something into it, and that had remained inside its body. Something shaped like an arrow. The arrowhead. Shobana Haruno had taken a mysterious arrowhead that had been inside Sugimoto Reimi's body, and stabbed it into his own stand, which evolved it. Wounds could grant power. That could happen to stands as well. The arrowhead buried into Whitesnake Ultimate, making the wound deeper.
What did you do?
Kars asked. Even he didn't know. Regardless of what Kars wanted, Whitesnake Ultimate's wound grew deeper and deeper, and soon it began evolving. Like with Poochie's version, an arrow motif appeared on the stand's 3 faces and 6 arms. The arrow was a part of it now, and the stand's new power emerged. Like Poochie's sea moon, it could control gravity. I've been down this road before, Dio said. Enrico Pucci failed me twice, but that only served to lead me to this moment. Everything is agreed upon. The 3rd time's the charm. The circle will be closed. Why? Because I'm here. The sheer force of his confidence was getting to Kars.
Not if I have anything to do with it,
he yelled, pulled out a stand with even longer rabbit ears than Funny's. Ultimate D4C. Too late, DL said, and DL's head and the other 8 bits of him fled Car's fist, floating through the air, just like Poochie had levitated off the deck of Dust's boot. Oh, I just remembered that I still had the personalised stand disc in my head, the version of Dust's boot Cars had made for me. I could fight. I didn't know what DL was up to, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it. Dust's boot! I shouted. Look, by this point, yelling your stand name was just how these things worked. Whoom! A massive submarine appeared, resting on top of my head. It wasn't heavy. It had corporeal form only to the extent I needed it to. The only thing it did was prevent me looking up. I popped out the headset periscope and locked onto DL. Fire! Cruise missile shot out of it and headed for the floaty bits of DL, but giant hands slapped them away. Behind the explosions loomed the massive upper body of Antonio Torres, reaching down out of the sky. You again? I fired some more missiles, but Antonio Torres' dumb ass knocked them all aside. While that happened, the bits of DL began rising up, and with him went Sea Moon Ultimate Requiem, now completely freed from Kars' control. Shit, I said, but another shadow crossed my periscope. I looked closer, and saw the largest version of Narancha's dust boot racing upside down across the inside of the sky. It was running on the barrier that covered Great Britain. In other words, on the side of Antonio Torres. Go! I yelled, and unleashed some cover fire. Torres knocked all these missiles aside as well, and as the pieces of DL got closer, he opened his mouth wide. I knew we couldn't let him swallow those. Antonio had swallowed Poochie too. Inside Antonio's belly meant outside England, and once Poochie was there, he'd completed his transformation. Narancha's dust boot was still filling the sky with missiles, but he wasn't doing any more damage than I was. We were fighting a giant zombie. He was dead to begin with, and it didn't look like the exploding missiles were causing him any significant pain. What else could we do? But just before panic really set in, I looked through my periscope and saw Elizabeth standing on the deck of Dust's boot. What was she planning? Skirt flying, she ran up the upside-down deck and leapt off the end. She was hanging from the rhinoceros beetle armour / Antonio Torres' body by her fingertips alone. Holy shit! I shouted, but she couldn't hear me. Instead, she curled her legs up till her toes were against the barrier wall, and then began running across it upside down. Dear God! I couldn't help laughing out loud. How the hell was she keeping her skirt from flying up? Before I even got over my excitement, she was dodging Antonio's giant punches, still upside down. She had one hand on her muffler and was waving it like she was throwing invisible shuriken. So maybe she was unravelling the thread and using that to perform these acrobatics. She was like the world's most graceful Spider-Man. It took her no time at all to reach the base of Antonio Torres' massive belly. Where'd Dio got to? He was still pretty far from Torres' mouth. What was Elizabeth about to do? I looked closer, and she took out a pendant with a red stone from her shirt front, took a tight grip on it, and shouted. Dustboot's sonar system was able to pick it up for me. I am Jorge Joestar's guardian. I fight to protect that beautiful bloodline. You can do this, Lisa. Put everything you got into this. Antonio Torres, you are always an idiot. Goodbye. Sunset Orange Overdrive! Elizabeth put the hand holding the red stone to Antonio Torres' belly and opened her palm, pinning the stone between him and her palm. A tremble ran over her. A red firework went off, and a ripple that actually was the colour of sunset ran across Antonio's translucent belly, around his sides, on his back, over his shoulders and down his arms, up his chest and neck to the top of his head, the ripples building off each other and rolling back and forth. Antonio Torres let out an unholy shriek. Floating towards him, Dio yelled, "Don't scream, you little bitch! Stand your ground and inhale me. Be good for one last thing before you die. Inhale! Stop screaming! Take the biggest breath of your life!" His entire body burning from the ripples, Antonio tried, pursing his trembling lips, but only succeeded in making strangled noises. No matter what he did, he couldn't inhale. "You worthless shit!" DL screamed. "Can't you do anything you're told? That's why nobody ever loved you. That's why they all pushed you away. Your mother peeled your filthy skin off in a desperate attempt to at least love the surface of you. You were always empty inside, and there was never anything in there that anyone could love. I bet even your mother couldn't believe it at first." Even after she peeled your goddamn skin off, she still couldn't find a single worthwhile thing about you! Antonio Torres was letting out strangled sobs, but try as he might, he couldn't seem to get any tears flowing. If you can't even take a fucking breath, then die! Die as a useless piece of shit you were born to be. As a worthless piece of trash even your mother wished she'd never given birth to. You're a maggot. The manure left by the cattle in the barns in the Canary Islands is worth more than you have ever been. Jorge Joestar's a complete nincompoop. But compared to how unsalvageably dumb you are, he almost looked acceptable. Stop fucking crying, you frappy hollow. Put your fucking lips together and inhale! Do what I fucking say. Breathe in! I could hear a steady bam 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 of missiles from the rancher's direction. I could hear shouting over the speakers, but that was Penelope. Hey! Vampire! Just because he's a zombie is no excuse for that kind of language. Apologise this instant! Some sort of beam shot out of Dio's eyes, slicing through all the missiles and blowing them up. Boom, 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 boom. Dio kept shouting at Antonio over the explosions. You spent the last 20 years trying to get back at them, and all you did was make them pity you. Come on! Your pathetic life is about to reach its suitably awful, pitiable, pathetic end. You failed to be of any use to anyone, did nothing for anybody, took nothing for yourself, and will die as useless as the day you were born. Is that what you want, Antonio Torres? Are you fine being shredded like your father by the same Hamon bitch who turned his ass to ash? Are you happy to die without a single memory of manning up and accomplishing anything? Hey, Antonio Torres, think! I'm the only one who ever expected a single goddamn thing from you. Are you prepared to leave this world having disappointed me? To die without once having anyone be grateful to you? Without once having anyone be glad you were born? Are you okay with that? Then I was a fool to expect anything from a piece of shit like you. I take back anything nice I ever said to you. You are nothing but a stupid, worthless, meaningless, ugly little poison shit. Admit Jorge Joestar was right all along, that every action you took was wrong, and drop fucking dead! No! Then inhale, Antonio Torres! Yes, first, let all the air out. The 1,000-meter-long upper half of Antonio Torres was turning to rags from the ripples, and if this pathetic monster had just been a little bit dumber, he might have died in time. But as he finally inhaled, Dio was pulled up towards him and vanished between Antonio Torres' puckered lips. The missiles Narancha and I sent after him were too late, and exploded all over Antonio's face. The explosions caused a crack in Antonio's giant head, and he began crumbling from the crack out.
Hey!
Someone said. I looked sideways. Cars was talking to me.
Stop attacking. If that zombie dies, we won't be able to send England back in time. Don't kill him till this is all over. And Dio is about to speed up time. If the zombie isn't there, this island will be left behind and vanish when the universe restarts.
Cars Senpai was absolutely positively correct. Bravo. I never imagined he had the same idea as me about the relationship between time and consciousness. I took out the Pebble phone, but this was originally Narancha's, and since I had it now, that left me with no way to contact him. I thought a moment and then gave the Dust Boots radio a shot. It worked. I told Narancha to knock off the attacks, and asked him to try to make Elizabeth stop too, and he didn't seem to get it, but he stopped. He picked up Elizabeth too. Once she was back aboard, Elizabeth radioed me, so I said we had to move Great Britain, so we needed Antonio Torres a little longer, and she said, Understood. I've already given him a fatal level of Hamon, but I can add some resistant Hamon and slow the effects down. It'll prolong poor Antonio's suffering, but I'll see if I can do anything about the pain he's in as well. Elizabeth was astonishingly kind to zombies. When I said as much, she just said, "No, I'm just trusting you, because you're also a Jorge Joestar. I'm in the state of mind to grasp at any straw." I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but she didn't seem to be inclined to clarify.
"It begins,"
Carr said. I looked up and through the crumbling belly of Antonio Torres. I could see the pieces of Dio and Sea Moon Ultimate Requiem floating above the rhinoceros beetle's armour, and that stand was still changing. Ruptures were appearing all over the surface of it, and as it crumbled away, a horse and rider and clock emerged, a stand even more fused with the arrowhead. Made in Heaven Ultimate Requiem. Jesus Christ. And a second round of sped-up time began. But what for? Next to me, Carr said,
"What waits for us at the end of this?"
The universe repeating on a spiral staircase. And then? I couldn't see the answer. Nothing came to mind at all. But then someone spoke behind me. "We have a terrifying idea, Jorge Joestar." It was funny and the funniest, but they both looked white as a sheet. "An idea?" "Yes, no, it's almost a certainty," Funny said. "Wait a sec, I'll check," the funniest said, pulling out a cell phone and trying to call someone. But he couldn't get through. "Oh," I said, "that won't work, but if you use this one from Parallel World, you might be able to get through." I handed over the Pebble phone and told him how to use it. Funny clapped his hands and sent the funniest to a Parallel World. He came back a moment later. He just popped his head out from between Funny's hands and said, "Yeah, just as we feared." Funny nodded and said, "We believe Dio Brando is headed for the past beyond the future." Beyond the dying Antonio Torres, Made in Heaven Ultimate Requiem activated, and the sun began to spin around us. Funny and the funniest took turns explaining. "The Valentines have two duties as leaders of the United States, two duties vital to the prosperity of our homeland. The first is to interfere in the Steel Ball Run, held at the end of the 19th or beginning of the 20th century. This is like a Valentine family ritual, more or less a practice one. The other is to protect the secret held in the underground facility beneath Trinity Church in New York, and ensure that no one gets near it. The second duty is of the utmost importance, and we will stop at nothing to fulfill it, no matter what it costs. Even wars or genocide. That's why we're telling you. Needs dictate that we let you in on part of this secret. The underground facility contains the body of a holy man. Whoever possesses this body, whatever group they belong to, will possess eternal prosperity so long as they maintain control of it. The body was gathered by our ancestor, 35 loops of the universe ago. The original Funny Valentine. The 23rd President of the United States. And the race where it was collected, 35 universes ago, was the first Steel Ball Run. There were 9 pieces to that holy man's body, hidden across the American continent. Those 9 pieces were the head, the eyes, the ears, the spine, the torso, the heart, the right arm, the left arm, and the legs. Exactly the pieces that Dio was just broken into.